Yo, yo, yo. Welcome to the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show, brought to you by Keeks Barbershop. As always, located in East Rochester, PA. I'm your host, Smitty. With me, as always, Drew, Joe. What is up, fellas?
What's up, brother?
What's happening, y'all? How we doing today?
Kenny Pickett season. Doing well.
We're just going to go there right away. All right, there we go. Kenny Pickett. New start
Kenny
for the
Pickett
Pittsburgh
season.
So this is a fantasy football show, but like pretty apparent. We're Steelers fans, all three of us.
What? I have a Cowboys cup.
True.
Who's on it?
That's not even the thing. Is that's not even the team of your wife?
No,
Jason
it's not.
Witten?
It's got Dak. It's got Amari Cooper. It's got Jason Witten. It's very
We'll
nice.
just pretend.
Where's Cooper
We'll
Rush?
pretend all those guys that brought you a fantasy championship in the past.
Yeah, they
No.
need to replace Dak with Cooper Rush on that cup.
Yeah, right. First quarterback to go 4-0 for the Cowboys ever.
Amazing.
Jerry Jones is acting like it's going to be a competition if Dak struggles. It's hilarious.
You know what's funny? Remember when I told you when that injury first happened, there was that guy that made that thing about how like Tom Brady came in for like the injured Drew Bledsoe and like how they had just found their Tom Brady and like we all laughed about it and then he just casually goes 4-0.
Yeah.
Maybe we're onto something. I don't know.
Derek
Hodges
is here
there.
already. R.I.P. Mitch Bird. Yeah, 3.5 games. It comes to an end. We're going to talk a little bit actually about like who could be the big beneficiary there when it comes to the Steelers offense. But first and foremost, as always, we turn to Dr. Drew for the injury updates of the week. Right around quick turnaround tomorrow with Jonathan Taylor being hurt. We know he's going to miss tomorrow's game, but is this something that could push past this week's game? How long do you expect this to affect him? Let's just start there.
So there was a rumor that it was a high ankle sprain. Sounds like it's not. It's a lateral ankle sprain, which is good in the lower part of the ankle. Unfortunately, though, that was a similar injury that Saquon Barkley suffered last year, and we saw what happened with him. It hindered him basically the entire season, missed a lot of time. Stefani Bell pointed out this week on her show that injuries like this, if you keep yourself in good shape, they could be different for different players. Jonathan Taylor is a workhorse that keeps himself in crazy physical shape. Saquon does as well, but of course he was coming off a torn ACL, so he didn't have the same amount of conditioning that maybe a Jonathan Taylor would have after he's been playing essentially since junior high. He hasn't missed any time. So we'll see it if it impacts him long term. It's going to be a week-to-week thing, though. Obviously, he's out tomorrow.
Yeah. Joe, is there anything to add to that? I mean, as a Dynasty Jonathan Taylor owner and is that the league? I might be 1-3 in that one. My fantasy league, by the way, that's my good lead that I'm 2-2 in. The league I'm doing really well at 2-2. Okay.
You just beat me this week. My team is mid as hell.
There we go. Okay. Well, anyway, that's the lead that I have Taylor in. So obviously not gonna have him this week, but I did have Josh Jacobs on the bench. He obviously just recently popped off, so I hope he does it again. But
he's a Bronco
Joe, anything to
He's
add
got a good
on
matchup.
Taylor?
The only thing that I wanted to add was that I'm curious to see who they utilize as their running back, as their primary like ball handler going forward, just because it's not really like in the wheelhouse for Nyheim Hines to come in and be
Philip
like
Lindsay.
a bell cow. You really think that Philip Lindsay will come out because he was on the
Frank
practice
Reich
squad,
already
right?
said in one of his press conferences that he's going to be involved.
Yeah, it's interesting. So there's a stat that's been floating around that I saw that said in games where Nyheim Hines has had at least 20 touches, he averages 17.5 fantasy points. So if he is getting more work, that could be a good thing. I don't think he would have been somebody that I ran out and got on waivers today or last night. But I do think that they'll utilize him more, which isn't saying a lot because they really haven't utilized him in a way that we thought we would based on how they were talking about him in the offseason or based how they paid him with the extension too. But I think there's going to be an uptick there. But yeah, I'm kind of out on Jonathan Taylor for the year. He was the unanimous consensus first overall pick. The Colts, I don't think anybody realized how bad their offensive line actually is. If you watch their games, it's pretty tough to watch. Matt Ryan doesn't have a lot of time. I think one of the things that we were expecting was that if he was having issues, then you would see him dump off to Taylor. Haven't seen that happen. There's not been a lot of holes for him to run through, and then they're not really getting to the into the red zone a whole lot. So I think that for me, if I'm 2-2 or worse and I have him, then I'd be looking to ship him off. People probably seem to think that he's going to come back sooner than later, so I think that you can get some decent value in return, but he's somebody that I'm looking to trade.
Well, that's interesting because we had us here on here as a topic. Is he a buy low candidate?
I wouldn't want to buy him, but I guess I would be sell. He's a sell low candidate for me, but I wouldn't give up anything to buy him. I just think, which is funny to say because if you look at his data for the last 2 years, he's had similar starts where he started slow, really tore things open in the later half of the year. I think his rookie year was more just due to utilization and him having to work his way through the depth chart. Last year, not really sure how or why that happened, but the line played significantly better than it's been so far. I guess you could buy low on him, but I don't know at what point do you realize it's just more of a burden to deal with and be frustrated. I get very similar vibes to Jonathan Taylor that I do Kyle Pitts, where it's like I know logically that like I shouldn't be playing this guy because they don't do anything, but then like my heart says like the talent's there, like I have to put them in the lineup, and then I lose again, and then next week rolls back, and then you have that hope again. So,
well, speaking of buy low candidates, I don't know if you have any off the top of your head, but Derek said who are some buy low RB candidates.
So I actually found this guy on Twitter. His name's Kevin Cole. I'm gonna pull this up for you guys real quick. He's charted running back expected versus actual fantasy points. So this is a pretty good like way to let's see. Let me see if this will work. Did that work? Yeah, it did. Okay. So this is a good indication of basically what they're expecting to do versus what they've actually done. So you could see guys that are below the line are all people that you could technically buy low on. So someone like Hall, Taylor, Fournette, Harris, James Conner, Aaron Dillon. Somebody that I think that is underappreciated in the fantasy community is Damien Harris. He scored like in 13 of the last 16 Patriots games or something like that. They're very dominant in the run game, and even though Ramondre is there, they've both been more than serviceable. So I think you could get Harris pretty cheap, especially with Ramondre getting more work in the passing game. I think that people are down a little bit on Harris. And then on the flip side of that, you could see people like CEH, Swift, James Robinson. Maybe those are people that you want to, or even Jamal Williams, people that you'd want to sell high on. So this is kind of where I would look at, but people that fall into this window that you think have some skill, that's going to be your buy lows.
Right off the top of my head, it was Leonard Fournette because he's not scoring a lot of touchdowns right now. I know he scored last week. Their offense as a whole has looked terrible with their lack of wide receivers staying healthy. I want a lot more of Tampa Bay. I think that they'll turn it around. Obviously, Brady had a big game last week, but it was all garbage time. I think eventually they'll come back to earth and be good for you. Especially they had the Steelers in 2 weeks.
There you go. That's the get right spot right there. Yeah. So maybe not this upcoming week, but the following week. That's when you want them. Drew, I know this one's going to hurt to talk about. Javonte Williams out for the year, and it's not just an ACL tear. This sucks, but let's hear about it.
Yeah, ACL, LCL, potentially PCL injury. This is similar to what Saquon suffered 2 years ago. To me, it didn't look like it was that bad. I don't know if you saw the play. It didn't look like it bent awkwardly. It looked like he just got tackled normally. I don't even know if it was non-contact right before he got tackled or what, but yeah, it's bad. He's probably a guy that I won't even look at in redraft next year because I typically don't like to invest in guys that are coming back from an injury like this. But I'm trying to buy him in Dynasty. He's still only 21 years old. He comes back in 2 years at 23. He could be Saquon Barkley this year. But going forward, unless you're looking for him in Dynasty, I'm out on him for the next 2 years, which is tough because I have a lot of shares.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just say, so if you're comparing it to the Saquon injury, you're probably not seeing the actual version of Javonte next year. You're looking at the 2024 season for
Right.
when we could see a return to form there. But,
Right.
At his age, you hope that that's on his side at least. But yeah, it's going to be tough, and it really sucks for such a promising player. We did get a dynasty question. They even said it was going to be a long one, so they couldn't fit it all into one thing, but try to pull this up. Have JJ, Devontae, London, Gabe, Curtis, Sam, Mooney, KJ Osborne, Jameson coming off IR soon at wide receiver. At running back, I have Ramondre, Ken Walker. Thank you for saying Ken and not Kenneth. Rashad White, P. Ryan, Hilliard. So great and not so great, respectively. Would you trade Gabe, Mooney, and Curtis for Melvin, Brian Robinson, and Khalil Herbert to balance out the roster? There's so much to this to sift through.
I feel like we're all going to disagree here.
Well, so the fact that Gabe Davis is part of this.
Yeah, I like
feel
him.
Like you're giving up too much. I think giving up Gabe, Mooney's a low, like a buy low candidate right now.
Yeah.
Gabe Davis has been disappointing, but I really think that we talked about this yesterday. The ankle, they said that he's looked better. He was a full participant in practice today, but I don't think that he's healthy. I don't know if he will be healthy. But you have the age factor there. And Curtis Samuel has been more than enough. Melvin Gordon, he's past his prime. He's not really useful after this year. Brian Robinson, we've yet to see, great story. I'm really glad to hear that he's practicing and that it went well today. And Khalil Herbert is next in line to kind of take over for the Bears. I don't see a scenario where they bring back Montgomery next year, unless he tests free agency and comes back, kind of similar to Melvin Gordon in a sense, where it's all right, we don't think that he could do it. I think that you're giving up too much and getting back too little.
I see a potential 1-for-1 there, kind of. I don't really hate seeing if you can sell off Curtis Samuel to get Khalil Herbert for a long-term thing. I think that you'd prefer to have Khalil Herbert long-term over Curtis Samuel. Sure. I don't know how long the Curtis Samuel thing's going to last. I think you could sell him high right now to a guy that's going to consider Montgomery coming back.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you there, but I'm also you said we were all going to be disagreeing. I don't think so.
Well, I wasn't going to trade Gabe Davis. That's where I thought the disagreement would be.
Oh, okay.
So did you get it?
No, I didn't.
Dang it.
We still have some time.
I'm not on board with this trade either. But I do, if you can get that 1-for-1, because I do like Khalil Herbert. I think we all like Khalil Herbert.
I like Brian Robinson too. I feel like he's going to be a good story, and he's going to bounce back and be relevant, I think.
I'm confused about the question marks here. This a chip. Okay, I thought it said this is a chip winning team. This a chip winning team? Question mark? Lamar, yes. CMC, Lenny, Jamar Chase, CD, Godwin, Kelsey, Judy, Dobbs, Mostert, Jacoby Myers, McKenzie, IR, Jameson Williams, 10-man PPR, 4-0 right now. Any move I should make? Oh, and I have Rashad White.
Team. That's a heck of a draft.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
the bench is kind of irrelevant to me.
Yeah, that one's pretty interesting. But yeah, I would say I would drop McKenzie. I don't think there's a scenario where he's going to slide in for one of your players. I would go for somebody that has higher upside. If you can get I know George Pickens is out there in a lot of leagues, especially if you're not from the Pittsburgh area. Somebody that could really fall into that.
I'm glad that you specified because he's owned everywhere if you're playing with Steeler fans.
Yeah, right. He was taken in the 6th round because someone saw that DJ was getting taken or something like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that I would go for running back lottery tickets. So if you see what happened with the Bears, if you can get ahead of something on the waivers where if that roster spot for you is really going to be, all right, is there any lottery tickets that I can jump ahead on? I would almost say the same thing about Jacoby Myers, but I actually really like what he's doing. So he's somebody that I would hold on to. He's a number 1 target getter in his offense. McKenzie is a slot receiver that kind of goes back and forth and was really splitting time until they kind of got banged up in the Buffalo receiving room. So he's been pretty touchdown dependent and has been getting those touchdowns, but I don't know if it's necessarily worth it at this point to go for that. But yeah, I would drop McKenzie, look for players in the wire. If you're going to handcuff anybody on your team, it's going to be Leonard Fournette for me. I don't think that anybody that fills in for CMC is going to really do a whole lot.
He has Rashad White.
He already has Rashad White.
Oh, he already has Rashad White?
Yeah,
okay. Okay, then he's good there.
Guy I'm looking at off the waiver is Michael Gallup. I thought he looked really good last week. Noah Brown has looked very good all season. I think that he'll take over his role. Noah Brown's going to fade away. I like Michael Gallup. I've been stashing him on my IR for weeks. If he's still available, he's a guy I would look at.
I like that one too. Cameron says, hey guys, I dropped Rhonda Moore to pick up Elijah Mitchell off waivers in a 16-team full PPR lead. Was that a dumb move?
Great move.
Current RBs are CMC, Saquon, Kareem Hunt, Naeem Hines, Madison, and now Elijah Mitchell. Current wide receivers are A.J. Brown, Amari Cooper, Ayuk, KJ Osborne, stashing Jameson Williams. Is everybody stashing Jameson Williams on IR that's in the chat right now?
I have him.
The third person that's had him on their roster.
I'm stashing
Imagine
him
not having
JMO.
Yeah.
It's a good move.
But no, in a 16 team to get a running back that is potentially like the leader of the pack for that running back room. We know that they kind of divvy up the touches in San Fran, but like you saw what he did last year in a 16 team league. I think that's a great move.
Yeah, and Greg Dortch essentially took over the Rondale Moore role. He lost his job due to injury, and DeAndre Hopkins isn't even back yet. It's just going to worsen his.
Rondale Moore's like my height.
Yeah, well, the thing was they were expecting him to be the slot receiver this season, and then he got hurt. But he actually played out wide because AJ Green didn't play last week. Dortch, as Drew said, he led snaps from the slot. He had 23, and 10 of those were run blocks. Rondale Moore had a pretty big spike in the percentage of plays that he had relative to like last year. He started off hot, and as the weeks were going all the way through week 9, he had a progressive incline on his amount of like offensive snaps, and then it immediately dropped like to below 50%, and he pretty much became useless. I know last year I thought he was going to be like the waiver wire pickup of the year. I screamed it everywhere, and it didn't work out so well.
There was people that blew a ton of fab on him, to your point.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But he looked pretty decent. He is the de facto wide receiver 2 for the time being. But knowing that DeAndre Hopkins is coming back, that Ertz has also been a target monster for them. To me, it's like I like that move a lot. Having any running backs that can do anything in those kind of leagues, especially at 16 teams, that's really important. So I think that he may have some splash here and there. It looked like they were designing plays for Moore and trying to find ways to get him the ball. But at the end of the day, that offense isn't really looking all that great. They've been more volume-based than looking good. I don't think they've scored 30 points in a game yet this season. But yeah, I like the move.
It's hard to know when to start Rondale Moore too. Just to add to that, he's just a guy that you're either getting 0 or you're getting a big week, and I don't typically roster guys like that because it's just frustrating.
Right. On the opposite end of a bad offense, you have the Detroit Lions offense. Jared Goff running the show there. It doesn't matter who's playing receiver. The league's best offense has been the league's best offense with the Detroit Lions. So Goff, I like how they threw in the CFL reference here. With the CFL offense he had this week, comes out looking like prime Brady. Is he a must start? Matchup proof. What do we think about Jared Goff?
Well, I don't want to spoil too much because that's one of the things we were supposed to do on Tinder today. But I will say that 3 out of the 4 games that they've played so far have been in the Dome. And the one game that he didn't do as well in was outside of the Dome. So I do think that there's some weather dependencies there. But at the end of the day, one of the most important things that you'll see from quarterbacks that tend to kind of come out of nowhere is that the game script for them really drives their need, and they just have an absurd amount of volume. So let me pull up their game script score real quick. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in, and then I'll pick back up.
Their total score each week has been above 70. And we talked about this last night, and Dak Prescott was my QB1 last year for bold prediction for this exact reason. This is exactly what I thought the Cowboys defense was going to look like. I was dead wrong on that because Micah Parsons just came in and just completely changed the entire story of that defense. But Jared Goff, I believe in. He's not matchup proof to me. Like, I'm not going to start him. Like, actually, you know what? He killed against the Eagles, didn't he? They're a defense that I don't typically like to start against, but I don't know about like teams like the Bucks or Bills.
The Eagles, he had 16 against Washington. He had 26. Minnesota, he had 14.9. Then last week he had 34.
So the Eagles,
the Lions killed on the ground.
Yeah, I was say they put up points still in that game. So that
must have been off the ground. Yeah, he's not matchup proof, but he's definitely someone that if he has a mid to better matchup, he's in my lineup because they're just going to be in shootouts all year.
Mid, I like it. He did come in our top 10 this week, number 9, QB9 in the aggregated Fritter ticker.
Yeah, so their game script score is definitely negative. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, though. So it's a negative 1.49, which means that like they take the average score differential at any given point in the game. So on average, they're down by 1.49 points. So it's not to the point where they're like a blowout. When Dak got hurt that year, like their average game score was -8.
Yeah.
So it was like the absurd amounts of levels of comeback that they needed to do wasn't there. But I think that's also a testament to the offensive line and how well they're able to move the ball. That yes, like they have this negative game script, so it's almost misleading. It's like right in the middle of the pack for the league. But I think that their ability to score is really making it seem lesser than it really is because they're giving up a ton of points, but they're also scoring a ton too.
Yeah, I don't think it's game script in the sense that they're down and it's garbage time. They're just shooting out. Like most of the weeks they're just back and forth.
Right. Man, I love that we're getting so many comments, but we've strayed pretty far away from the last injury to talk about is Cordero Patterson, who just went on IR. Obviously, there's a couple other running backs there in Atlanta who might be splitting time, but what's this mean for Atlanta's backfield?
So he has the knee injury first and foremost. It's undisclosed.
Yep.
We don't know how severe it is, but he was placed on IR. For me, Tyler Algier is the guy you want, but I'm not starting any of these guys over the next several weeks. They have the Bucks, Niners, and Bengals the next 3 weeks, and by that point, you might be seeing Cordero Patterson coming back. So it's concerning about your usage for them, especially if you spend a priority waiver on him or Caleb Huntley. But I think that Algier is probably the guy that's going to take on most of the work in that backfield. It's just that I don't know when you're going to be able to use him and if he's going to be effective.
Joe, do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Their schedule's brutal. And they said that the surgery that Cordero had wasn't like something that's going to be like a long term. It's just put him on the IR. You also have to imagine that when Damien Williams comes back, that he's going to eat into some of those carries as well. So I think that like he's going to have a chance to like make a name for himself. I think everybody had the impression that they were going to try to utilize Cordero less just to get the most out of him, if that makes sense. Just because he's such a dynamic player, they don't need him to necessarily be a bell cow for him to be effective. So if Algier is able to step up, then I think he'll continue to have a role. But these next few weeks, it's pretty much like the worst case scenario of teams that you'd want to play if you're trying to like establish yourself as a running back.
Right.
I wanted to add one more quick injury too. It wasn't on the list because it just noticed it late, but Treylon Burks, he has turf toe, so he could miss a few weeks as well.
Turf toe. That might play into something for me later.
Yes.
Excuse me. Was there anything else not injury related as far as like week 4 headlines? Obviously, we started off the show talking about the quarterback change in Pittsburgh going to Kenny Pickett, but was there anything else not injury related that kind of jumped off the map to you guys that popped up?
The big thing for me was J.K. Dobbins and how he looked in Buffalo. So he kind of was eased into the game in his first week back, but they definitely utilized him a lot more last week. He had his first receiving touchdown. He also ran one in as well. And I think there's more to come from him. I think people forget that J.K. Dobbins was like the most efficient runner 2 years ago before he got injured. And it was really good to see. And I think similarly, in terms of like a bounce back and better utilization, Austin Eckler finally showed up. So he had a huge game last week. So he was held without a touchdown for the first 3 weeks and then puts up 3 last week. So I think that if you drafted Eckler, hadn't seen that production just yet, I'm sure that limited or maybe prevented people from completely like selling on him. So I know on the show last week, somebody had asked like, oh, like, should I trade for Eckler? And we were all like, yeah, like that person's probably loving their life right now. So hopefully able to get that trade done.
That kind of plays into what I was going to say about my guy then. But I want to add one more thing about the concussions. Obviously, we saw what happened to Tua. Happy to hear that it seems like he's okay. But they're going to make some changes to the protocol. So if you have a guy that's going to be out potentially with a concussion or leaves a game with a concussion, it's a good sign that you should probably start looking at the waiver wire, because the way they're changing this up now, they're going to be much more conservative about bringing guys back a week later. So guys like Hunter Renfrow, obviously, they've been out for a few weeks with their concussions. If there's any sort of wobbly behavior on the field, there's a good chance that guy's not coming back in at all.
Right. Cameron says with JT out, we kind of touched on Nyheim Hines already. Is Nyheim Hines worth flexing over Kareem Hunt this week?
No. Browns have a great matchup for running backs.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
I think that Nyheim Hines is usable this week, but I wouldn't use him over Kareem Hunt.
Yeah. I know Nick Chubb's been killing it, but I think that both of them are going to be usable this week with how good of a matchup that is.
Yeah. Was there anything else that's not injury related in the headlines before we go to Tinder?
I think we're good. Chad had said that Mac Jones was limited and on track to play this week, which is shocking because the dude could like not walk last week.
Yeah,
so I don't know how that's going to go. I feel like he could take one bad hit and he's going to be done for the year.
I thought you were going to play the word shocking into saying about Zappy. You missed something there. It was a missed opportunity.
I didn't realize that you said the E, so I wouldn't. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. I don't know all my white quarterback names. I'm sorry. I'll work on it.
Yeah. They're basically it's literally like if you ordered Mac Jones off Wish.
Yeah, but you've already ordered like Mac Jones or someone else.
Mac Jones was already off Wish.
Yeah. Sheehan. All right. So should we play some Tinder?
Yeah, man, let's swipe.
Fantasy football Tinder, if you guys are familiar, we did this last week as well. This will kind of play into like the headline stuff, maybe some trend stuff, and we're going to tell you if we agree or disagree with it going forward.
Cool. Yeah, and then as we're answering, if someone is going to swipe right on that person, then you see the little green button come up. If it's going to be a swipe left, then you're going to get the red X. So let me read our first profile here. So this is Jared Goff. He's currently QB5 in the league, which is very hot. So just some more things for you. Let's see. He's 5th in the league in deep ball attempts. He's 3rd in air yards. He is 8th in air yards per attempt, and his accuracy rating is ranked 6th in the league. Wow. His expected points added over the average quarterback is 30.3, which puts him at 9th. So do you think that Jared Goff will keep going off this season?
Like, yes and no. Because to the level that he has, I am not so sure. But I think what he's doing, I think he's going to continue to play well. That's what I'm saying.
Let me put it to you this way. Will Jared Goff finish as a top 5 QB this year?
Top 5, no.
Okay.
He doesn't have any rushing ability, so it's very tough for him to maintain that.
Right.
But his schedule is pretty favorable to continue this. They play the Bills at home on Thanksgiving. How great of a game does that actually seem like?
I know. They were talking about that on might have been part of my take, and they were like, that's literally like finally a Lions game worth watching on Thanksgiving. No one's going to get a stop.
Yeah. And they play so much better on Thanksgiving. I'm taking their money line on Thanksgiving against the Bills.
It's already been said. It's out there. You got to do it now.
Yeah,
I think Goff could finish in the
I'll buy
top
right
10, but I can't give him top 5 for the reason Drew just said. If he were able to, if he was a dual threat guy, or not even a dual threat guy, just every once in a while, like a Herbert or Burrow, like somebody with some ability, maybe. But yeah, Kenny Pickett. That's
Move over, Lamar. We have a new RB1 in town.
But I can buy into Goff finishing top like 10 to 12, 5. No,
I would give him. I think he's going to finish in the 7th or 8th range.
That's what I think so too.
Beautiful.
But top 5, I'm gonna give him the X. So that being said,
did you sell high on him in Dynasty though?
Would I sell high on him in Dynasty?
Because like maybe
No,
they go after a guy like Caleb Williams next year. There was a lot of talk about them being interested in Malik Willis. This could have been just a 1 year.
That's what I was going to ask about.
Bridge. Like I might sell high on him
from a non-fantasy standpoint. Like is Goff going to be able to force Detroit to not take a quarterback?
Let me see his contract because he's got a pretty big deal. So he is a free agent in 2025, and there's a potential out at the end of this end of the season for $10 million in dead cap.
I think I would sell high. I really would.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's what, 20? I think somebody actually put it in the comments. I think he's 27.
20. Yeah, 27.
He's still young, but do they believe that he's the future? And I don't know that they do.
But and if it's not Detroit, where is it? His next stop.
Yeah. And is his value ever going to be higher than this?
I don't know. He did go to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago.
With the Rams.
That's true. Though. That's true. No, it doesn't matter. Once you play in if he would have won that thing, he'd be a made man forever.
Matt Ryan went to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Matt Ryan was the MVP that year, and his coach lost that game.
Matt Ryan's made like what, $200-some million in the NFL, so I think he's doing all right.
Yeah.
Matt Ryan wouldn't throw to Kyle Pitts either, just like he wouldn't throw to Julio in the red zone.
He turns 28 next week.
Matt Ryan is on pace to destroy the fumbles record.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Not if Trevor Lawrence keeps up with the 4 fumbles per game.
Head-to-head battle in the AFC South.
But yeah, it'll be interesting because I think the problem that you run into here is so that the total cap hit that he has is around $30 million, which I think is fair for what Goff brings to the table. But if he has a big couple of years, you're not going to want to pay Jared Goff $40 million.
What if he falls off in the second half though? We could be completely wrong. His value is so high right now.
If he falls off, then I think that you're going to get more from a quarterback if you trade him in the off season than you are no one really trades in the NFL in the middle of the year. Really, it doesn't happen. But I think somebody that everybody thought at the beginning of the year was he's the waiver QB to own. It was it's Carson Wentz. I would say that Jared Goff is more he's not matchup dependent. Where Carson Wentz, if he has a tough matchup, it's he's not going to get it done. If he has a good matchup, then he'll do well. That's why I ranked him higher than both of you did this week. I don't think you guys ranked him at all, actually. But Jared Goff, it's all about protection, and that offensive line wasn't nearly as good as it was this year for Detroit, and I think that you're seeing the benefits from that. I think if you look at the stats of his best years in LA also came when they had their best offensive lines, and when he struggled, the offensive line also struggled. So I think he's very dependent on what's in front of him. He's not really the type of quarterback that's going to move on his feet, scramble, make plays, and but I think as long as he has a good line there, then he'll be more than fine.
He looks like an Indianapolis Colt next year. 3 years in a row, they just take on some crazy contract.
No, he's too young.
Work out. Well, he's
not that Wentz was old. Yeah, you're right. They're going between old and young.
Yeah, so Wentz was the last one. Now it's Goff's turn. It just seems all right. They're gonna make a dumb move like that.
It's gonna be Goff, and then it's gonna be Kirk Cousins when he's old.
Yes. Yeah.
There it is.
At a ridiculous contract. That's what they do. Take a guy with a ridiculous contract. They're going to the Lions are a first or a second round pick.
Yeah, it's gonna be Cousins or Derek Carr in a few years.
I would take Carr.
Yeah.
I think that's who it's going to be.
Should I trade Mike Williams and Aaron Jones for JT,
No.
or trade Aaron
No.
Jones for Jamar straight up? Which trade do you
Yes.
prefer?
Yes, second one.
Yeah. So obviously you're trading Aaron Jones to get Jamar. One for one.
Yes. Yeah, because Aaron
Yeah.
Jones is in both trades.
Yeah, we'll see you. That's 100%.
Yeah, Jamar
Except
is
that-
like struggling right now, and he's still okay. He's gonna completely turn it around for sure.
Leads the league in drops. Don't tell Steeler fans that because they are convinced that it's Deontay Johnson.
Yeah. Facts. All right. But anyway, to answer this first tender, we are all in agreement then?
He's not going to keep the top 5 pace, but I do think
7
Yeah.
or 8.
if he's at home, he's a must start for me.
Sorry, Jared.
Logging off or logging Goff, I guess I should say.
He doesn't need us. You've seen his wife. He doesn't need us.
He still needs me.
He's still
All
after
right.
Sean McVay's wife, though.
We swiped. We got a new profile here.
Yeah.
So let me read the bio for you. This is Gina Smith. He has been the most accurate quarterback in the history of the league in the first 4 weeks of a season.
Unbelievable.
He has led the Seahawks to a 2-2 record. He is averaging 33 pass attempts per game, and he is averaging 8 air yards per attempt and is top 5 in the league in deep ball completion percentage. Are you buying the Geno hype? Do you think this is sustainable throughout the year, or do you think that Geno will fall back into irrelevancy?
I think he's gonna fall back into irrelevancy, and that's pretty easy. If you take away last week, he was mid. He's averaging like 12 to 15 points a game first 3 weeks.
Well, that was because the weeks 1 and 3 were actually over 20 points, right? But week 2, he had like 9.
He had 17 week 1, he had 6 week 2, and he had 18 week 3.
So he was
Oh, my
QB
league.
15,
Why do you have more in my league?
QB 15, QB 30, QB 7, QB 2.
I just like we said Jared Goff as a sell high. Geno's like the ultimate sell high at quarterback. If anybody would take him.
Yeah,
He got
that's-
dominated against the 49ers, but who hasn't?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's weird because in Yahoo, right, he had 21.2 week 1, 6.08 week 2, 22.9 week 3, and 35.7 week 4.
Did he have a long touchdown with a bonus?
We don't play that.
Neither do we. I'm on ESPN looking.
But no, sorry, Gino. This is a great story though.
Yeah.
What he's doing right now in Seattle. I'm not believing it. The thing that I will say about it though is the number of pass attempts wouldn't surprise me if they were 0-4, but the fact that they're like 2-2 and playing okay. So it's not like negative great game script where he's just throwing the ball. I'm a bit surprised by that aspect of it.
Their pace of play or their game script is at negative 0.59. So they're pretty much keeping it even most of the games.
Mhm.
I honestly can't believe it. From what I've seen in like previous years and how they utilized him, like I remember last year against the Steelers, it was like he was barely allowed to even throw the ball. And it's like if he was even moderately capable of any of this stuff, like why didn't you let him do this before? Like was Russ telling everybody that like he's not allowed to like do this and like I don't want him to look good? Like it just feels crazy to me that like he's taken such a leap forward. And what year is it now? Like it's not like he's like a new guy. He's been around since 2013. Like who has like a resurgence in their career 9-10 years in? Like it's just mind-blowing to me.
It's funny when they let Russ cook, he just looked like crap, and they let Geno cook, and he looks good.
77% completion percentage.
Russ is so mid. It's insane.
Sorry,
All right.
Gino.
So
I really
very-
wanted to say Gene yes too. But
Chad in the chat is right though. He's like the perfect super flex 2 QB league. Like he player. He's perfect for that.
Mhm.
Which I thought Marcus
And
Mariota was good with that. And last year
Rashad
they
Penny
had-
also healthy right now, which might be
Yeah.
the biggest surprise about the Seahawks.
Yeah. Good for him too. It's awesome.
Chad's always in the comments providing some good stuff.
He's killing it.
He's basically a fourth host.
I'm here for it. All right. Well, you guys are a picky bunch. Let's
Yeah,
see.
I want to.
I have no idea where this
Come
is
on,
going.
I'm looking for some matches here.
All right. You know, usually is like men swipe right on everything. You guys are.
Is it power hour?
It ain't
We
2
just start
a.m. yet.
swiping right.
It ain't 2 a.m. yet.
Okay. This next gentleman, his name is George Pickens. He's a wide receiver for the Steelers.
heard of
If you didn't know, they had a change in quarterback at halftime last week. So he has a new guy throwing the ball to him. If we look at the first 3.5 games, Deontay Johnson had dominated the landscape as far as targets. But George Pickens actually had his first 100-yard game last week against the Jets once Kenny Pickett came in and took over. So with Pickens having his first 100-yard game, 6 receptions, and Deontay Johnson being left behind with only 2 receptions, do you think that George Pickens will emerge as Kenny Pickett's number 1 wide receiver option for Pittsburgh?
Go ahead.
You go ahead.
I don't want to go back on what I've said already. So here's the thing is,
I don't think he's going to be number 1. So like the way you phrase that bothers me a little bit, but I think he's absolutely going to emerge as a guy that you could start. I think they're both going to be startable.
Yeah. See, that's where I'm struggling is being the number 1 option. I don't know, because this whole time I've said whenever Kenny Pickett becomes the number 1, I could see Deontay Johnson being like his Addison at Pitt, because I think that there's a lot of similarities between the 2 skill sets. So I don't want to immediately go back on that, but it is undeniable the connection that we saw and how often he was looking Pickens' way on Sunday. Now, was that a product of up to that point Pickens not being utilized and Mike Tomlin saying, hey, you're going in, we got to get this guy more involved than he has been in the first 3 weeks? I don't know. I want to see it happen again in Buffalo before I really buy into this. But obviously we were super excited about the talent as soon as we drafted it. So it's nice to see it finally be put together and have a 100-yard game. You know what? I'll say yes. I'm going to go back on my word. It's going to be Pickens and not Deontay Johnson as the number 1 rest of the way.
I think that they're both going to be good fantasy options, but Pickens' big playability is just out of this world. Like what he can do, it's only going to take him 1 or 2 plays to pay off in fantasy, to be honest with you. So if Deontay's still getting 6 to 7 receptions a game and Pickens is getting big plays downfield, scoring a few touchdowns, I think they're both going to be
I'll tell you who's not going to be is Chase Claypool. Let's just start there.
Sorry, Zana.
She's starting to understand that he's not going to be on the team next year. I keep telling her. Well, is he a free agent? This this year or year after? So after next year.
Yeah.
Yes, but
unless you trade him.
He's not getting a second contract with Pittsburgh, and I've been telling her.
Yeah. The crazy thing, I think the craziest stat I saw about George Pickens last is in the second half, he averaged 5.92 yards per route run. If you look at what is a good value for that, an elite yards per route run is 2. So to be almost at 6, I know it's not sustainable, but it's absolutely ridiculous. So they were utilizing him more in the first half as well. He got a 28.6 target share in the first half with Mitch, and then he was up to 33.3 in the second half with Kenny. I think that he's progressed continuously throughout the look of it, but it'll be interesting to see. I don't think that you can keep away from Deontay. Seeing how Kenny's able to progress through his reads, I think that he's going to find the open guy, and Deontay always seems open. But Pickens has said that he was open 90% of the time, so we'll find out if that holds true. But Kenny also said that if he has guys that are one-on-one, he's willing to take the risk and make the play. So I'm excited. I think it's a good thing for the Steelers offense, especially in the receiving room. And it'll be interesting to see, I think, what happens with Najee as well. He hasn't really been utilized in the passing game all that much. But I'll be curious to see if they get a little bit more creative with him coming out of the backfield. So hopefully it's all things ahead. But if it were me, and I am anticipating the Buffalo game to go horrendously. So I think you're going to have a lot of buy low candidates after the Buffalo game, but that's just because their defense is just so good.
I took the Steelers money line plus 600 because what the hell? Plus 600 odds. You just got to frick it.
If you give me plus 600 odds on anything, I'm taking it.
Yeah, frick it.
Concerned for Pickett because of the rough stretch coming up. Yeah, I mean, you talked about a gauntlet. This is why, from a non-fantasy perspective, I think we all wanted to see Pickett start the game against the Jets. I mean, even if you were on board with Trubisky being the one to start the season, I think that was the first point where everybody was kind of in agreement. Okay, this is the time to make the switch. You got the 10 days to get picked and prepared for the Jets, and then you have that ridiculous gauntlet after that. So you talk about being thrown into a fire. This is about as tough as it gets when you look at the way these other teams that they got coming up are playing. So don't know if you guys have anything to add to that comment, but it's not pretty.
Missy Matthews tweeted today that only one other quarterback made his NFL debut, his first start against the top defense, and it was number
Ben
7.
Roethlisberger.
Number 7. Coincidental? I think not.
All right. So was that our last? Was that our last contender?
That's it. We're out of matches for today. So.
All right. So our only fantasy subscriptions. I got to quit spending money. People were asking about it. What was showing up on my bank statements, but last week's subscription went to Romeo Dobbs, who stacked a couple of nice weeks now together. 21.3 points 2 weeks ago, 13.7. He dropped a touchdown. This could have been a massive game instead of just a nice game for Romeo Dobbs. But I still feel pretty good about it because, like, long-term projection, I think that he's really showing that he is the guy in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers was very complimentary of him on the Pat McAfee show on Tuesday, talking about it. Like, those drops are going to happen. He'd like to see him make that play, but it's a play that he's seen him make in practice, and he's absolutely going to continue to look his way. Obviously, Alan Lazard's still there. Christian Watson's going to come back at some point and be a part of that mix, but Romeo Dobbs is looking like he could very well be Aaron Rodgers' guy going forward for the rest of the year. So I felt pretty good about that one last week.
All right. So who are you taking this week?
This week, going a little bit off the radar with Bobby Trees, Robert Woods in Tennessee. Now you think about Tennessee's passing game, and you're probably thinking, like, why are you picking somebody in the Tennessee passing game? We talked about Drew added Treylon Burks to the injury discussion talk for a reason. I actually appreciate him doing so because that is the reason that I have Robert Woods here. Somebody's going to take up those targets, and also Washington, very poor in terms of limiting wide receivers production. I believe they give up the third most points. Is that correct?
Second most in
Second
full
most
PPR, 48.9 points.
Yeah. So this isn't like necessarily like a long-term thing for me with Robert Woods, but for this week specifically, I really like him as a play. He might come back up again later when we talk about Drew's DFS lineup.
There you go. Beautiful. All right, Drew, you want to go next?
Yeah.
You want to talk about who you had last week, and then we'll go from there.
Last week I had Damien Pierce. That worked out pretty nicely. One of my rare W's this year. He received all the carries for the Texans, and they had negative game script. And I talked last week that I was worried that if they were a negative game script, what they would do. Rex Burkhead getting a lot of touches. Actually turned out that Damien Pierce was second on the team in targets. He didn't do much with those targets. He only had 8 yards, but 6 catches, gave you 6 extra points in PPR. 14 carries for 131 yards, and he had a 75-yard touchdown, which was awesome. You got the bonus if your league does that. I think that he's a great guy going forward. He's a top 15 running back. Finally showed that he can handle a larger workload. Looks like the Texans trust him. I think he's going to be a staple in your lineup moving forward. This is exactly what we were hoping for in the preseason.
RB12 on the Fritter ticker this week.
Yeah.
Damien Pierce.
So who are you subscribing to for this week? You going to stick with the running backs?
Stick with running backs. Going back to the well, I'm going with James Robinson. He had a tough
in the game against
week.
Damien Pierce.
Yeah. He had a tough game last week against the Eagles. Obviously, they've been dominating essentially everyone all year. The Texans are the team that you want to face to get right. Austin Eckler fed last week. You saw what he can do. The Texans are second worst on their rush defense over the last 3 weeks, giving up 30.7 points per game. And not only did Eckler gas him up, Khalil Herbert came in after David Montgomery's injury, and he had 20 attempts for 157 yards and 2 touchdowns against him. Jonathan Taylor went 31 for 161 and touchdown week 1. You can obviously run on the Houston Texans, and I think that James Robinson is going to run all over them this week.
Do you have any concerns about Travis Etienne out snapping Robinson last week, or do you think that was just more a game script thing?
Game script. You can't run on the Eagles. You just can't. So
Jordan Davis is so good.
Yeah, dude's huge.
Robinson RB7 for us. Go ahead.
I think I actually had him higher too. I think I had him at RB4. I think overall.
You probably did because I think I had him at 10, so that would kind of balance out. And then
I had him somewhere in the middle, I think.
Yeah, I like him this week. for sure.
Cool. All right, so I guess that leaves it to me then. So last week, I picked Joe Burrow as my only fantasy subscriber. He had a decent week. It wasn't anything too amazing. He finished 10th overall for quarterbacks, which was a little bit lower than I was anticipating. Passed for 280 some yards. He had 2 touchdowns. Could have had a few more, honestly, I thought. But we'll take the performance for sure. And it was good to see. As far as this week, my OnlyFans subscription is going to be Logan Thomas. So fun fact about Logan Thomas, he had been coming off of IR, had the ACL last year. He's quietly had his route participation increase every week. So he was at 57% week 1. He was at 61% week 2, 62% week 3, 70% week 4, 71%, or no, I guess that was week 4. So 70% this past week. So now the other thing that you keep in mind is that Jahan Dotson had a hamstring injury. Don't expect him to play this week. And beyond that, if we look at points giving up, teams that are giving up points to tight ends, Tennessee is giving the most with 24.3 points per game to tight ends over the last 3 weeks. And these weren't really anybody that was crazy either. So this was Indianapolis. You had Darren Waller, and then Buffalo Bills with Knox. So I think this is ripe for the taking. And I think that Logan Thomas is somebody that's definitely rosterable. He's going to get that additional bump, especially knowing now that there's less mouths to feed with that offense. So I'm really high on pretty much everything that's not running back for Washington this week. I think they're going to be able to throw all over the Titans. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about Logan Thomas this week. So subscribe.
I like Logan Thomas a lot this week as well.
Yeah. That's a good transition into DFS, actually.
All right, let me pull up Joe's charts that he can talk about.
Perfect order.
What is this now? Why does it say present? They changed the wording for that. All right. Okay.
Do you want to go over a little bit of your highlights?
Yeah. Well, actually, I was saying first and foremost, we forgot to do this last week, but if there's anybody that's listening or watching for the first time, this is a thing that Joe puts out weekly that he is about to describe to you guys what this is.
Yeah, so this is an average points allowed chart that monitors the last 3 weeks of fantasy output based on the team on the left. That's the defense that you're considering. And then the team or the opponent on the right-hand side, that's the team that your fantasy players that you would have are on. So, for example, if we're looking at this chart right now, anybody that has like a blue color, that's going to be a good matchup for your players. Anybody that has a red color, they have a bad matchup for that week. So if we're looking at, say, that top line, that's pretty much saying that Detroit is terrible at defense. They are the worst defense in the league, essentially. So for New England, they have good matchups for the quarterback position, for the running back position, receiving position, tight end position. And then if you were to play New England's defense, it's a middling matchup against Detroit, and then people aren't kicking a lot against Detroit because they're scoring a lot of touchdowns. So it kind of looks the way that you would expect. The darker the color, the worse that the teams are. And these are offered in standard format, half PPR and full PPR formats, so you can kind of figure out what works best with your league settings. And the DST numbers might not match specifically to the output that you get in your league just because everybody's settings are a little bit different. But it does give you a frame of reference if you're looking for something to stream. Last thing I will say on this is that this isn't to definitively say like who you should start and who you should not. So for example, if we're looking at tight ends this week, Pat Freiermuth is going up against Buffalo, who's the worst matchup for tight ends in fantasy football. That doesn't mean I'm going to bench Pat Freiermuth for somebody off the street just because they
good God,
are a tougher
3.3 points.
Yeah, and standard, they don't really give up a lot as well at all. But that being said, it's like if I don't know, if you have, say, like a wide receiver 2 or your flex position, and you're trying to decide that, then this becomes a lot more useful. But you're not going to bench, say, Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson or Lamar Jackson because they have a tough matchup. So this is just another data point, and because it's looking at the last 3 weeks, if there's things that have changed, and you can see those changes quicker than you would if you're looking at the overall rankings for the season.
Right. All right, Drew, take it away.
Yeah, so Joe already alluded to this. We're liking the Washington Commanders this week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to skip right down to tight end. To his point, Logan Thomas, phenomenal matchup this week. Absolute no-brainer in DFS. I don't understand how he's priced where he's at. He's only coming in at 3,200. He's the 17th priced tight end. There's 17 other tight ends that are priced higher than him. And he has the best matchup this week. And he was the easiest player for me to stack with Carson Wentz. Quarterbacks are a little tough this week because guys with the best matchups typically aren't on the normal DFS slate. Joe Burrow playing on a Sunday night, Russ tomorrow night. The Pats have a great matchup, but Mac Jones is injured. We don't know what's going on with that quarterback situation, so I stayed away from that. So Carson Wentz stacking with Logan Thomas was a great move in my opinion. Logan Thomas, no matter what, if you don't want to stack with Wentz, Logan Thomas needs to be in your lineup. It makes no sense where he's at. Second guy, both of the running backs I kind of considered for my only fantasy of the week. I went with James Robinson. Already said my piece with him. I think he's a must play. He's only coming in at 6,300, which is reasonably priced. I paid up for Nick Chubb this week. He's been the best running back in football week to week. Don't have to say much about him. I paid up for 8,000. Chargers are giving up 27 points per game, 33 points per game to running backs. Obviously, going in DFS lineup. Cooper Kupp, I paid up for him at 9,600. Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp, the only guy that you can put in a lineup every week and be like, he's getting me what I need. Arguably should have been the number one overall pick by everybody in fantasy football this year. He keeps producing.
He's doing better than he was last year, which is like
insane. It's insane.
Isn't he like the 5th or 6th overall player?
Let me look.
Like score, like you would think it would be like all quarterbacks at the top.
Yeah. It was like that last year with him, though, too.
Yeah.
I'll find out.
While you look at that, I'll continue. I put Robert Woods into my wide receiver 2 slot. Smitty already had a chance to talk about him. Ramondre Stevenson down on my flex. Pats have a great matchup for their running backs as well as their quarterbacks. I didn't want to partake in the quarterback situation, but I went with Ramondre Stevenson. Consider Damien Harris. He's a couple hundred more than Ramondre Stevenson, so I wanted to save the money so I can get Cooper Kupp in my lineup. And then my final pick for my wide receiver 3, it's kind of tough because I paid up on Cooper Kupp, Nick Chubb, and guys like that, so I had to essentially punt on my last wide receiver slot. I went with Khalil Shakir. Gabe Davis is struggling with his ankle injury. Isaiah McKenzie is in the concussion protocol. Jamison Crowder fractured his ankle. So all 3 of those guys are most likely going to be hindered by injury or completely miss time. And Mike Tomlin said at his presser this week, they're going to be doubling Stephon Diggs. He's still going to do damage, but they're going to have 2 guys taken away from the defense covering him. There's going to be someone that's going to be open. Gabe Davis is probably going to get some work, but I'm punting on this position. I'll spend 3,200 on Khalil Shakir, and hopefully he gets a couple targets, maybe a touchdown to pay off.
Khalil Shakir is probably the best suited player to play in the slot for them at this point. And if that's the case, we know Akella Witherspoon's missing again for the Steelers.
Yep.
Which means Arthur Millette's going to be in the nickel. Yeah, he can't cover anybody. So
3,200 for Khalil Shakir. He could be that guy that's winning you leagues or winning you DFS this week. Isaiah McKenzie was that guy who won a lot of money for people last year. Khalil Shakir this time.
I like that dart throw.
So Cooper Kupp is currently 3rd overall in fantasy points.
He had 26 last week without a touchdown.
It's Jackson, Allen, Kupp, Hurts. Diggs is 5th. Mahomes. Goff is currently 7th overall. Tyreek Hill, Saquon, and then Justin Jefferson and Nick Chubb are tied at 10.
It was funny on Pardon My Take. They said that the Lions actually won the trade if you take away the Super Bowl. Just take away the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, that's it. If you just take away the most important part of the game, sure.
All right. Anything else?
Drew, how did you do in DFS last week?
Better than you.
No, I know. That was more for.
You just turned it into a roast session.
Well,
know.
he was gassing me last week. He was ripping on me. So I had to take my
Did you win money
this year? Yeah, I only won like $15, but I only paid $5 to get in. So it was a rough week.
It's in the green.
Like 146 points or something.
It's in the green.
Yep.
Did you answer my question from Twitter? What was this question from Twitter?
Joe did.
What?
You responded.
Who did?
You did. You responded to Tyler.
We didn't answer. Yeah, I did respond to Tyler.
What was it though?
He had like 5 players to want to rank.
Oh, all right.
He
Let me
didn't
see.
like it.
I need to start 3 of these 5 in a 2-flex lead. Drake London, Michael Pittman Jr., Chris Godwin, A.J. Dillon, Chase Edmonds. All right, well, it's definitely – I really like Godwin this week. Chase Edmonds is out of it for me. I'd probably go Godwin, Dillon, Pittman.
I think I
Are
said
you
the
worried
same
about
thing.
that bold prediction?
What bold
Godwin?
prediction?
Or for Edmonds? Zach had top 10.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm worried about it. I'm an idiot. What was I thinking?
Well, I mean,
Kyle Pitts is tight end 1, so
Isaiah McKenzie over Gabe Davis, though. Looking nice.
Maybe. How long is this injury going to be lasting for Isaiah McKenzie?
He'll be fine.
Gabe Davis's ankle injury really.
Yeah. Yeah, but he's playing. Is McKenzie playing right now?
No.
Yeah.
He won't play this. I don't think he'll play this week. The whole concussion situation after what happened.
So, Drew, what are your 3? Because I think Joe and I have the same 3.
Yeah, I said Godwin 1, Dillon 2, Pittman 3, London 4, Edmonds 5.
Why were you?
He only needs 3.
Why were you against London? What's the matchup there?
I'm against London because his team sucks and I don't trust them.
I'm not even against London. It's just I'm higher in those 3. I'd be fine playing Drake London. Chase Edmonds is the one I'm rolling out immediately.
Right.
Atlanta plays Tampa Bay this week, and for some reason I feel like the Falcons and Bucks always have like a high scoring matchup. It's just like that division.
Mariota,
so who are you playing Drake London over?
Yards.
Who are you playing London over though?
Michael Pittman. The Colts have been so bad. It's just so hard. I have so many.
I know, but without Jonathan Taylor now, like.
But is Matt Ryan going to deliver the ball?
I don't hand it to him.
He's got Patrick Surtain on him this week.
Crap. He might be the second best corner in football already.
I don't know if I'm playing Pittman. Is Patrick Surtain shadowing right now? He is shadowing, right?
Yeah, he typically does. And against the Colts, I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. You get rid of Pittman and that's it.
No, I can't go back on it. I'm sticking with it.
I think I go London. I don't really know if I like A.J. Dillon this week, though, either, to be honest with you, because he's been not what I expected.
You're not a Quad City DJ?
I am.
Will you pick your 3?
Drake London, Chris Godwin, A.J. Dillon.
Okay.
So Godwin and Dillon for sure. And then you can decide what you want to do with that third receiver.
I honestly, though, with the fact playing on the Thursday night game, I don't love that. So I might switch to London too for that reason.
Broncos are at home.
I'm not saying it's because of Drew with the Patrick Surtain thing. I'm going to say it's because of a short week on Thursday night.
And they have to travel to Denver.
Yeah.
It just screams bad news for Pittman this week.
Pittman loves to fly. He said it like 4 times.
But Matt Ryan doesn't like to move, period. Like, he looks like he's going to die every single time he gets hit.
All right, guys, as always, thank you for watching or listening to this episode. Listening now, because you can listen to us podcast form, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you can find us. That's all going to be in our link tree, which you can find in our bio, Twitter at AT412FF show, all that good stuff. You can tweet at us, ask just questions, which Joe will answer. Other than that, we can't thank you enough for tuning into this episode. We wish you the best of luck in your week 5 matchups, and we'll be back for week 6. Bye-bye.
Keep the families of Dylan in your prayers.